For patient use, check that the necessary emergency equipment is available and in good condition. Check that the equipment is not damaged and that the components are correctly attached. Check that the pipeline gas supplies are connected and the backup cylinders are installed and adequately filled. Check the system suction connections. Check the vaporizer installation. Make sure the top of each vaporizer is horizontal and not on crooked. Each vaporizer is locked and cannot be removed. If using a Tech 6 series vaporizer, make sure the alarms and indicators operate correctly. Ensure that no more than one vaporizer cannot be turned on at the same time. Check that all vaporizers are full. Check that the breathing circuit is correctly connected, not damaged, and the breathing system contains sufficient absorbent. Turn the system switch to on. If not connected, connect the scavenging and verify proper operation. The pipeline and cylinders test. First, the pipeline test. Disconnect the pipeline supplies and close all cylinder valves. I'm going to zoom into the pipeline and cylinder pressure gauges, and when I disconnect from the pipeline supplies, I want the pressure gauges to fall to 0. I am now going to disconnect my pipeline pressure supply, and you'll notice my pressure gauges have all dropped to 0. Reconnect the pipeline supplies. After reconnecting my pipeline supplies, I want to look at my primary supply pipeline pressure gauges, and I want to make sure they're between 41 and 87 psi. For my cylinder test, I want to disconnect the pipeline supplies and close all the cylinder valves. I also want to make sure that my cylinders are full. Open each cylinder valve. Make sure that each cylinder has sufficient pressure. I didn't have a nitrous oxide tank, so there's no pressure there. However, I have good pressure in my air, and I have to replace my oxygen, so I need to replace my oxygen tank. I'm going to check all my cylinders for high pressure leaks. And I want to first, if I have auxiliary O2 flow meter, I want to turn this off, and I want to turn off my suction if it has a suction also on your machine. I'm going to check each cylinder separately. I'm going to start with my oxygen, and I'm going to turn on my O2 cylinder on the back, and you'll see that it pressurized. Once it's pressurized, I'm going to close the cylinder valve, and I'm going to note the cylinder pressure. And I'm going to wait for 1 minute and record the cylinder pressure again. I'm going to repeat these steps for each cylinder, so now I'm going to do it for my air cylinder. Now my air cylinder is pressurized, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the valve, wait another minute, and record the cylinder pressure. If the cylinder pressure for air or O2 decreases greater than 100 psi, there's a high pressure leak. Connect the pipeline supplies. If you're not in a room with pipeline supply, open the cylinder valves. Turn all flow controls fully clockwise for minimal flow. Set the auxiliary common gas outlet switch to advanced breathing system. Set the system switch to on. Make sure that the O2 flow tube shows approximately 0.025 to 0.075 liters per minute. Test the Link 25 system. Slowly turn the nitrous oxide flow control counterclockwise. You will increase the flow rate specified on the table. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my nitrous oxide to 0.8 liters per minute. And what I want to do is I want to look at my O2 flow, and it should be greater than 0.2 liters per minute. I'm going to point out with a blue arrow my nitrous setting of 0.8. And we're going to look at my green arrow showing that my O2 flow is greater than 0.2 liters per minute. The next stage, I'm going to turn my nitrous flow to 2 liters per minute, and I should have a O2 flow now greater than a half liter per minute. Third stage, I'm going to turn my nitrous flow to 4 liters per minute, and now my O2 flow should be greater than 1 liter per minute. And lastly, I'm going to turn my nitrous flow to 10 liters per minute, and my O2 flow should be greater than 2.5 liters per minute. The second part of testing the Link 25 system is with my oxygen flow decreasing. What I want to do is I want to set the nitrous oxide to 9 liters per minute, and my oxygen 3 liters per minute or higher. Then I'm going to set the nitrous oxide flow to the rate shown in the table on the lower left-hand side of the video. I'm going to first decrease my nitrous oxide flow to 8 liters per minute, and then I want to look at my O2 flow and make sure that it doesn't fall below 2 liters per minute. Next, my set nitrous oxide at 4, and my O2 should not go under 1 liter per minute. Lastly, I want to set my nitrous oxide setting to 0.8 liters per minute, and I want to make sure that my O2 flow is greater than 0.2 liter per minute. And as you notice, I'm pointing out the 0.2 mark, however, my oxygen is way above that. After testing the Link 25 system, I want to disconnect the O2 pipeline supply or close my O2 cylinder valves. Before I disconnect, I'm just going to zoom back into the anesthesia delivery system because I want to zoom in on my flow meters as well as my display. When I disconnect, I want to make sure that the low O2 supply alarm occurs on the display and that my nitrous oxide and O2 flows stop. And my O2 flow should stop last. The supply gas has been disconnected. On the display, you'll see on the top left-hand portion, there is an alarm. And if you look to the right with the flow meters, my flows have stopped for both my nitrous and my oxygen. And I'm just pointing out with the red arrow, the no O2 pressure alarm. I reconnect the O2 pipeline supply to prepare for my next set of tests. The vaporizer back pressure test. First, I want to make sure that my system switch is set to on, and I already have the anesthesia delivery system turned on. Set the oxygen flow rate to 6 liters per minute. Make sure the O2 flow stays constant and the float moves freely. I'm going to start with my isoflurane vaporizer, and I want to adjust the concentration from 0 to 1%. And the O2 flow must not decrease more than 1 liter a minute through the full range of adjustment. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my vaporizer. And I'm going to do the exact same test on my sevoflurane vaporizer. And turn off the vaporizer. The negative low pressure leak test. I want to make sure my system switch is set to standby. And then for this test, I'll also need my low pressure leak test bulb. Turn the auxiliary common gas outlet switch to the ACGO position. I first want to check my low pressure test bulb. To do this, compress the bulb until all the air is removed from the bulb. Occlude the inlet of the test device and make sure it's a tight seal, then go ahead and release the bulb. If the bulb of the test device inflates in less than 60 seconds, use a different low pressure test bulb. Test the system for low pressure leaks. First, turn the flow controls 1.5 turns counterclockwise. Remove the air from the low pressure test bulb and connect it to the ACGO outlet. Go ahead and release the bulb. If the bulb inflates in 30 seconds or less, there is a leak in the low pressure circuit. Moving to the vaporizers, test each vaporizer for a low pressure leak. I'm going to start with my isoflurane vaporizer. I'm going to turn the vaporizer to 1%. Repeat the low pressure test with my test bulb. I want to make sure that the bulb stays deflated, and if it inflates in 30 seconds or less, then there is a low pressure leak. I'm going to turn off my isoflurane vaporizer and repeat the exact same process with my sevoflurane. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go turn this on to 1% also. And repeat the low pressure leak test. After the test, turn off the vaporizer. With my negative low pressure leak test complete, I want to purge the system of anesthetic agent. I want to turn all flow controls fully clockwise for minimal flow. And I want to make sure I do not over tighten. And to clear the system of agent, I want to set the system switch to on. And set the O2 flow to 1 liter per minute. I want to flow the O2 for 1 minute, and after this is done, turn the O2 flow control fully clockwise for minimal flow. Return the ACGO switch to the circle system position. For the alarms test, I'll need a test lung. Connect the test lung to the patient connection. Set the bag vent switch to vent. Set the system switch to on. Utilizing the display, I'm going to enter the following ventilator parameters. And first, I want to select my mode VCV. If it's not currently in VCV, I'm going to use the menu key to select it and confirm with the control knob. I'm just going to hit my menu key again to exit out. And I want to put in the following ventilation parameters. And first, with my tidal volume, I'm going to select that, use my control knob, and turn this down to 400 milliliters. Next, my respiratory rate. I'm going to turn this up to 12 breaths per minute. I want an IE ratio of 1 to 2, and it's already selected. I want my Pmax to be 40 centimeters of water, and it's already there, and have my PEEP turned off. I want to set my O2 flow to the minimum flow and make sure that all my other gases are off. Push the O2 flush button to fill the bellows. Set the bag vent switch to bag and then to vent. Make sure mechanical ventilation starts. There is no subatmospheric pressure alarm. The ventilator shows the correct data based on settings, and the bellows inflate and deflate during mechanical ventilation. Set the O2 flow control to 5 liters per minute. Make sure that the pressure at the end of the breath is approximately 2 centimeters of water. As you can see with the red arrow, I'm pointing out that my measured PEEP is 2 centimeters of water. Additionally, I want to make sure that the ventilator shows the correct data based on the settings, and the bellows inflate and deflate during mechanical ventilation. Next, test the O2 monitor and alarms. To do this, I need to remove the O2 cell and make sure that the cell measures approximately 21% O2 on room air. Using the display, I want to access my alarm menu, so I press the menu key, select Alarm Setup from the main menu. I want to set the low O2 alarm to 50% and make sure that a low O2 alarm occurs. Select the menu key to access your alarm settings. Now turn the low O2 alarm back down and make sure the low O2 alarm stops. And when I confirmed it, my low O2 alarm stops. This created a latch alarm, and I can acknowledge this by pushing the alarm silence key. Put the O2 cell back in line. Set the high O2 alarm to 50%. Press the O2 flush button to fill the breathing system and make sure that the high O2 alarm occurs. Set the high O2 alarm to off and make sure that the alarm stops. Now that the high O2 alarm has stopped, turn the flow to 100% O2 for 2 minutes and make sure that the O2 cell measures 100% oxygen. Test the low minute ventilation alarm. Press the menu key, select Alarm Setup from the main menu, and set the alarm limit for a low minute ventilation of 6 liters per minute. Now I want to make sure my low minute ventilation alarm occurs. Then set the low minute volume alarm to off. Test the low airway pressure alarm. To do this, remove the test lung from the patient connection. Make sure that the low airway pressure alarm occurs. Lastly, I want to test the sustained airway pressure alarm. To do this, I set the APL valve to 70 centimeters of water. Next, I set the bag vent switch to bag. Occlude the patient connection and press the O2 flush button. Make sure that the peak high blockage alarm occurs after approximately 15 seconds at the sustained pressure limit. The breathing system tests are comprised of 3 separate tests. Before testing, make sure that the auxiliary equipment is functioning correctly and verify that the AGSS is functioning correctly. Make sure that the check valves on the breathing circuit module work correctly. The expiratory check valve rises during expiration and falls at the start of inspiration. The inspiratory check valve rises during inspiration and falls at the start of expiration. The breathing system bellows test. If the device is not already in standby, set the system switch to standby. Set the bag vent switch to vent. Set all flow controls to minimum flow and occlude the patient connection. Push the O2 flush button to fill the bellows, then release the O2 flush button. When I'm pushing my O2 flush button, I also want to look at the pressure gauge, and I want to make sure that the pressure does not increase to more than 15 centimeters of water on the gauge. I'm going to now transition to the bellows. If the bellows falls lower than the top of the indicator, there is a leak. This concludes the breathing system bellows test. The breathing system circuit test. I want to set the system switch to on, set the bag vent switch to bag, occlude the bag port, and set the APL valve to 70 centimeters of water. Set the O2 flow to 250 milliliters per minute. Occlude the patient connection. Press the O2 flush button and pressurize the bag to approximately 30 centimeters of water. After pressurizing the system, release the O2 flush button and watch the pressure gauge. The pressure must not decrease. Any pressure decrease shown on the pressure gauge indicates a leak in the breathing circuit. The breathing system APL valve test. Set the system switch to on. Occlude the patient connection and the bag port. Set the APL valve to 70 centimeters of water. Set the O2 flow to 3 liters per minute. I want to watch my inspiratory pressure gauge, and I want to make sure that the pressure does not exceed 85 centimeters of water. Some pressure fluctuation is normal. Next, set the APL valve to min. Make sure that the value on the inspiratory pressure gauge is less than approximately 5 centimeters of water. While pushing the O2 flush button, make sure that the value on the inspiratory pressure gauge stays near 0. I'm pushing my O2 flush in, and as you notice, my pressure gauge is staying near 0. Set the O2 flow to minimum and make sure that the value on the inspiratory pressure gauge does not decrease below 0 centimeters of water. This concludes the breathing system test as well as the system checkout. For starting the case, enter the appropriate settings. Select the menu key to select ventilation mode and use the ventilation setting quick keys to make setting changes. Use the menu key to access the alarm settings to set the appropriate alarms. To end case, after disconnecting the patient, simply press the end case key and press confirm. By pressing the end case button, this silences the volume and apnea alarms that would occur after the patient is taken off the machine.